Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 2. This week, I'm going to do a couple of lectures on Chapter 2, but specifically on a couple of activities that I want to go into more detail on to explain the motivation behind why we're doing what we're doing. It's very easy, and especially in an online class, to just go through the activities, do step by step, take pictures, and not really stop and think about what it is that you're doing. And so I wanted to go into more detail and explain why we're doing what we're doing and why this works and why we want to do this in the first place. So the first 3 activities in Chapter 2 were downloading and installing the ADK. The ADK is just a series of tools that we are going to use to be able to do things with installations, different types of installations. And we're going to go over 2 of them in this chapter. We're going to be doing the answer file, the unattended installation, and then imaging. And I'll go over imaging in a different lecture. So for right now, let's talk about unattended installation. So unattended installation is the idea that you can just hit go, walk away, and you know that the computer is going to get set up exactly as you want, not just with a very basic Windows install that you will then need to come back, click on a couple things, enter your name, enter a password, all that kind of stuff. It takes care of all of that. It automates all of that. So when you have a large number of machines that you need to be installing Windows on, this is a very useful thing. Imaging is actually even better for larger organizations with more computers. But if you have, say, 5, 6 computers, and you want the same installation with the same user and all the same applications and things like that, the unattended installation is really a good choice because you just point it to the disk image, you let it go, and boom, it does everything it needs to do. It installs everything, configures everything. So we're going to go over a couple of the basic steps that you're going to need to do this, and most of this is covered in Chapter 2.4, in Activity 2.4. So in Activity 2.4, the first thing it has you do is make a directory. Step 3 is making a directory using the command line interface. Called WinInstall, and this is where we're going to be putting our Windows installation. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to take a disk, take a Windows DVD, which should be at this point in your DVD drive on your virtual machine, and we are going to copy essentially all of those files that would normally install Windows. We are going to copy those into this folder that we just created, the WinInstall folder. Now, very quickly, when using the command prompt, there are a number of commands that we use that do the same thing that we can do if we were just using the Windows graphical interface. So MD is the command make directory or create a new directory. So what I just did was I created a new directory in the root of the C drive called WinInstall. So if I come down to the File Explorer, go to the local disk, the C drive, you'll see there's now a WinInstall folder. It's empty, I just created it, but there's a new WinInstall folder here. That's what I just created here. So everything that we're doing in the command prompt is going to be reflected in the graphical interface, in the File Explorer and Windows. So you can always go back and check and make sure that it's doing what you think it's doing. So, okay, I've created the folder, and then what it asks us to do in step 4 is copy all of the stuff, everything from the Windows install disk that we've got in our drive, and copy it into that directory. So that's what the xcopy command is doing for us. So we're getting all the files, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom install disk. We're going to create our own Windows disk that will have very specific settings that we want it to do. We want it to use to install. So the d***, this is a shortcut in command line syntax that says everything. Star is everything, dot is the extension, and then everything. So like notepad.exe is an executable file, .exe. So notepad, this star is anything on the left side of the dot, which include notepad or any other file, and this star is anything after the dot. So this is everything, star. And so we're going to copy everything from the D drive, which is our CD drive, and we are going to copy it into that Windows install, that WinInstall folder that we created on the C drive. We just created it. Now we're going to copy everything from the D drive into this folder. And then we're going to have a little switch here, S, that basically means it's just going to do it. I won't go into a lot of detail with the switches and with command line interface right now. That is kind of for a separate class. What I would like you to be able to do, though, is read and do your best to understand what these commands are doing at a high level. You don't have to understand everything that they're doing. Anyway, so I'm gonna pause this and let the disk install. It's gonna take a few minutes for it to copy everything down. Okay, so with everything copied, now what we now have is our full DVD stored in the WinInstall folder. So if I open this up, you see this is everything that would be on the DVD. If I were to go to the DVD and open it up, it would look just like this. So I now have a copy of the install DVD here on my WinInstall folder. This is good. We are going to then alter the contents of the WinInstall folder. We're going to alter the contents of the installer to include specific configurations and things that we want to add, so that when we go to install using this particular image, we don't have to do anything. It won't ask us anything. It won't stop and see who we are. It won't ask for a password. It won't ask if we have our activation key or anything. Okay? So once we've done this, we want to open up the tool that we're going to use to actually create the answer file, which is the settings that the installer is going to look at. So if we come down to the start menu, and just something very quickly, whenever you are looking for something in Windows 10, if you click on the start menu and just start typing the name of what you're looking for, it's going to pop up. So in this case, I want the Windows System Image Manager. Now, you can see that there is a recently added because I just installed it. But if it wasn't up there, I click on the start menu to pull it up, and then I just start typing Windows. Or if I can type, I will start typing Windows. Windows, if I don't see what I'm looking for, I just keep on typing until I see the application that I'm looking for up here, Windows System Image Manager. And then I click on it and it runs. This is the best way. If you don't know where something is stored, that's the best way to access things in Windows 10. So it pulls up the Windows System Image Manager here. Now there's a number of places, number of different panes of information here on the Image Manager, and we're going to go through most of them in one at a time, and I'll talk about them in a little bit detail. So the first thing we're going to need in this is if we're going to be altering the install, we need a copy of the install. So down here in the Windows image section, we need to grab an image, or basically a copy of our Windows install. So if you right click here in anywhere in the Windows image, right click is the magic, I want to do something but I don't know what I want to do. So I right click and it should end up giving me some list of information that I can work with. There. So what this is saying is select Windows image. That's my option. So I select Windows image, and now I have to find the image. And remember, we just made that image, right? So if I open up the file manager, this is the image. This is the disk. I copied it into WinInstall on the C drive. So I need to get myself over to there. So if I go to this PC, the local disk, and then WinInstall. This is where we saved everything, right? So open this up. Now inside these different folders, this is all of the files that we need. These are all the files, excuse me. Inside sources is where we have the image. Now the image files are called WIMs, Windows Image. What we're looking for is the install image. The boot image actually starts up the computer. That's when you put the DVD in and actually start the machine. Boot is what starts the machine. Install is what's actually contains the entire system. So this is what we're going to alter, is the install WIM file. So open that up, and it can't be open. Yeah. All right, so it's going to take a second for it to figure it out. It's going to mount the image, it's going to look through it, catalog all the files, and then it's going to give me a list of what is in my image. So again, I'll pause because this can take a little while. Okay, so we're back, and as you can see, the Windows System Image Manager has gone through, cataloged the whole disk, and so now we have everything inside our Windows install disk. So now we're ready to create a new answer file which will hold all of the new configurations and new things, information that we want. So to do that, come up here to the Create Answer File, the Answer File section, right-click, and create New Answer File. So New Answer File, and we are going to call this We'll call it something later. We'll leave it as untitled for right now. So these are all the different component passes, as we call them, that we can use. Now, I want to take a minute and talk about what these passes are. Imagine that you're painting a picture, in oil painting. The first thing you do, you have a blank canvas, it's empty, and you're going to paint the background. So you paint the background, and then you let that dry. Then you start painting the larger items on top of the background. And then every time you do this, you stop, let it dry, and then you start adding more and more detail. You get finer and finer and finer. That's kind of how this works. That's kind of how Windows gets installed. The first thing it does is has this base Windows PE, which is the pre-installation environment. It's a very, very small Windows install that just is enough to basically start up and get ready to do the installation. That's about all it can do. So each one of these passes, as we call them, is like a layer in the oil painting. So the Windows PE would just be the background. So it opens up and it gets everything ready to start painting. We then go through each individual pass, these numbered passes, and each one of them has their own set of things that they do, their own pieces of information that they will add to the Windows installation. So imagine you go through the entire hard drive with pass 1 for Windows PE, finish, start with pass 2, offline surfacing has things it does, it goes through the whole thing, finishes, stops, go back to the beginning. Now 3, generalize, it goes through and then removes all the specific information like a username or a password, things like that, removes all that to give you a generic Windows install, as something you would get like when you first purchased a machine, instead of something that someone has already logged into, and so on and so forth. So each one of these components has a very specific purpose. It does its pass, goes on to the next one, and so forth. So that is how Windows is installed. And so the answer file is set up the same way. It is set up in the 7 different passes. So we can decide where we want to add our customization, where we want to add the specific things that we are going to put into our custom Windows install. So what the activity has us do is we're going to go in and we're going to add our own product key. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow us to just put the disk in and let it install without having someone sit there, wait for a half hour for it to finally finish, and then ask for the activation key, put it in, and then move on to whatever else it's going to ask you. IT in general is all about automation. How much can we get done without us having to sit there and wait for something? Because the longer we're sitting there waiting for something, it's that much time we're not doing something else, even if something else is just surfing the internet. we have a goal in general is make things as efficient as possible with the least amount of our interaction. So this will do that. In this particular case, this will be one thing that we won't have to do. So where is it located? Well, if you follow along in the book, it is going to be located in components. So if I click on the plus next to components, this is going to open up that whole list of components. Now what I'm looking for is the AMD 64 Microsoft Windows setup 10.0.xxx neutral, meaning the generic install. There are many, as you can see here, many different kinds of these installations that are built into the disk. In other words, Windows can install many different forms of Windows, many different types of Windows, all from the same install disk. This is true even for professional versus enterprise versus home. We only need one disk. All the information is there. It's just whatever is going to be installed. Whatever components are going to get used in these passes will create a specific version of the install. So we want Windows setup. So let's move our way down here to Windows setup 10 point whatever neutral. This is the one we want. So let's open this up. And there's a bunch of different settings for your generic Windows setup. This is everything that will happen by default. Well, we're going to go change one of those things. Let's go to user data, because this is where our activation key is going to be. Right here, our product key. So if I click on product key, notice up here in the properties, every time I click on something, it updates to whatever properties are available for that particular installation item. So the product key, as you can see, has 2 settings. It has the actual key itself, and then one setting called Will Show UI that I'll talk about in a second. So first, we want to actually change the product key. Right now, there's nothing there. So, well, let's put in the product key. Now, you have your product key that came with the version of Windows 10 that you downloaded from Imagine, from Microsoft's Imagine site. You don't need to use that. You can use the generic trial key that is in the book. That'll give you 30 days and you can put it in again. It's okay. This is a virtual machine. This isn't real. You're not using this in production anywhere. So that is why these things are made. So I'm going to add the key, and then I am going to talk about the will show UI setting in just 1 second. Very quickly, before I make any changes to my product key, I have to actually add it to my pass. Right now, this is set as the default settings. If I want to change it, if I want to make it a custom setting, I need to add it up here into my answer file. So if I right-click on the product key, allows me to add setting to pass 1. The first pass. Now, depending on which key you choose, it's going to be a different pass because there's different things that happen in different passes. So whichever setting you select is going to have a specific place in the list of in the order of installation that is going to occur. So the activation key is in the very first pass. It's one of the first things that happens. So we'll add it. Notice up here it adds in our answer file in pass 1, the Windows PE pass. We're now adding the setting, the product key. So now that we have this product key here, we can go in and change, right-clicking, you can go in and change the key. We can start adding in the product key given to us in the book. Okay, so now the key is in there. The next thing we're going to do is change the will show UI setting. So if I click on this, notice there's a drop-down menu that shows up here. Allows me to pick from certain valid values for will show UI. So will show UI is it going to show the pop-up window that asks for an activation key, a product key, or not? So the valid values are always, so it'll always pop up and ask, which is not what we want. That's the default, but it's not what we want. Never means no matter what happens, whether it works or not, it's not going to show up. On error means that if something happens, if this key turns out to be not valid or it's not able to activate it, then something will pop up. And so that's what we want. We want to make sure that if there is a problem, it'll tell us there's a problem. Otherwise, it's just going to go on and continue installing. Okay? So we now have the product key in here, and we have a specific UI setting, only on error. So now we've started customizing our answer file. When you're done, this is the one that is needed for the activity. When you're done, we want to save our answer file. So up here at File, we can save the answer file as. And there are, in the book, it tells you there's 2 different names for answer files that will automatically be sought out by different passes. The Windows PE pass, which is what we're going to use, uses the auto unattend file. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that in our WinInstall. So we have WinInstall in sources. It is going to look for auto unattend.xml. So this file will automatically be grabbed by the Windows PE environment when it first boots up. So we don't have to specify in our commands when we tell it to go grab the answer file, we don't have to tell it where to look. It'll just find it. So hit save, and we now have our auto unattend saved. Notice it's now called auto unattend up here. Okay. If you want, it shows you that you can open this up in Edge and see the XML file, actually see what these files look like and what the settings look like. But that's it. This is how you would create an answer file. Now, in the next lecture, I'm going to talk about how we're going to use this and how we're actually going to create an install and how we're going to use an image to grab this information and then install a brand new clean Windows 10 on a machine.